Let me talk about our black women real quick. Check. Black on black and beauty's intact. Trust. There's nothing you lack. Nothing can ever sever our soul ties when we together. You my ride or die, girl. Forever, ever. Forever, ever can fly in any weather. Black, intelligent, smart, and clever, full of grace and honor. How dare we ponder? Your strength make a black man's heart grow fonder. Protect our black queens at any cost. See, without the black queen, we catch a loss, B. Taking L's from left to right, vision blurred, but with the black queen, we elevate, you heard? Honey, caramel, hazelnut, bronze, chocolate, milk, all shades, no cons. Skin absorbing all the sun, so much melanin. Love the color of your beauty and the light within. Concept, baby.
Concepts, you said it right. I am beautiful in God's sight. Don't you know I am Mother Earth? Everything black and beautiful I have birthed. Let's review my history. Some think it's steeped in mystery. Royal blood runs through my veins. I have carried my people's pains. I am dark like a night in Tunisia. I possess power and wealth like the Queen of Sheba. Naya, Kim, Cynthia, Viola, Kadia, Zozabini, Gabrielle, Beverly, Issa, from Africa, India, America, Jamaica. Dark beauty runs across the world, make no mistake, beautiful mind and beautiful skin. The peace and power that come from within. Don't you feel the pull? We are the color of beautiful.
Image and mirroring his reflection. Black and beautiful, my shortcomings is his perfections. A victim to this spoil and methodless while they toil. On the clouds, I'm in crave. Homage to my people who fight to be equal.
Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to Colorism Conversations. It is 2021. Happy New Year. And I am just so excited for what this year is going to bring for us and for all of you. And I'm just so excited about today's show. We've been away for a little bit, and I'm not sure what season this is for us, but it's 2021 and we're up and running again. And I'm so happy to be able to come to you today and to bring you this amazing show that we're having today on a very interesting topic. It's a topic that I think we need to be talking about. And typically, we talk a lot about colorism, and we're going to tie the humanity of the angry Black woman into colorism some today. But I think it's an interesting conversation for us to have today. And we have a really special guest that we are so excited to welcome to Colorism Conversations. I ask you to please invite others to come and to share in this conversation that we're going to have. If you're watching the replay, welcome. And we ask you to invite others to listen to this conversation, and we welcome your input, your feedback, as we talk about something that we're talking about deconstructing the Sapphire stereotype. And we're going to talk some about the history of the Sapphire stereotype, what it is, if you don't know what it is, in regard to the angry Black woman and how it has followed us through decades it's a stereotype that has followed us through decades. And so we're going to talk about it, and we're going to deconstruct it, and we're going to talk about the whole stereotype of the angry Black woman. And before we came on, my guest Lauren and I were talking about it, and we have a lot of things to be angry about. We really do. But we're going to talk about how that's perceived when we are angry, or when we are not going along with the flow as people think that we should be. So let me get right to it. So I want to introduce our guest to you today. She is the founder and CEO of Sankofa Phoenix Institute, a virtual platform exclusively dedicated to empowering Black women to conquer toxic social narratives and the destructive impact of systematic oppression. As a woman of color herself who has been challenged by the impositions of racism, colorism, sexism, and ageism, she innovatively channeled those provocations to earn a master's degree in behavioral health, professional certifications as a life coach, and become the CEO of herself. I love that. It is through that personal and professional composite she provides a solution focused and culturally competent approach to serve the unique context of Black women's challenges in reclaiming our power to live life on our terms. Please welcome life transformation strategist and culture catalyst, Lauren Fowler. Welcome, my beautiful sister.
Hello, Karen, and thank you for inviting me to this conversation today.
We are so glad to have you here with us today, and so excited to get into this conversation. I know that it's something that we've had to deal with for a very long time, the whole stereotype of the angry Black woman. And so being able to really address it and deconstruct it and be able to come to terms with some things and how we are going to begin to overcome that whole stereotype. So we're going to start out. We want to give you some history about the Sapphire caricature that has been floating around for a long time. It's been a long time. And the information that I'm going to give you is taken from the website, the Jim Crow Museum. So the Sapphire I have a hard time saying it, caricature.
There you go.
The Sapphire caricature portrays Black women as rude, loud, malicious, stubborn, and overbearing. This is the angry Black woman popularized in the cinema and on television. She is a tart tongued and emasculating, one hand on a hip and the other pointing and jabbing her arms. I'm sorry, pointing and jabbing or arms akimbo, violently and rhythmically rocking her head, you know how we did, mocking African American men for offenses ranging from being unemployed to sexually pursuing white women. She is a shrill nagger with irrational stages of anger and indignation and is often mean spirited and abusive. Although African American men are her primary targets, she has venom for anyone who insults or disrespects her. The Sapphire's desire to dominate and her hypersensitivity to injustices make her a perpetual complainer, but she does not criticize to improve things. Rather, she criticizes because she is unendingly bitter and wishes that unhappiness on others. The Sapphire caricature is a harsh portrayal of African American women, but it is more than that. It is a social control mechanism that is employed to punish Black women who violate the social norms that encourage them to be passive, servile, non threatening, and unseen.
Mm.
So that is the Sapphire caricature. Now, there are so many things there that we could just really hone in on in regard to how this has been established as the angry Black woman. And one of the things that I particularly want to talk about is it says that her desire to dominate, the Sapphire's desire to dominate, and her hypersensitivity to injustice makes her a perpetual complainer. But she does not criticize to improve things. Rather, she criticizes because she is unendingly bitter and wishes that unhappiness on others. So, you know, when you talk about the injustices, because like I said before, when we first started out, we have a lot to be angry about.
Indeed.
We really do. Um, but when you start talking about the fact that the caricature of the angry Black woman is that she's hypersensitive to injustices.
Mhm.
I think we need to talk about that because there's so much going on in our world that went on in 2020 and even that went on this past week. And when we start talking about her being hypersensitive to injustices and just being a complainer and bitter, the fact that when we are angry and expressing ourselves, that's how people are looking at us, that's a real problem.
It is. It is.
It's a real problem for us. So tell me what you how you feel about that particular interpretation of Black women when they are speaking out against injustices, and that we are labeled as being bitter and hypersensitive, which many times we are labeled as being so hypersensitive about everything, and many times it's rightfully so.
Well, I think we start to talk about how we are being continuing to be dehumanized. And so I want to sort of start my contribution to this conversation by getting into a definition of humanity. We talk about the human race, right? So from my perspective, from my observation, and I think it's pretty much a common assessment, is that when we say humanity, we're talking about the state or quality of being human, which is inclusive of both our anatomical parts as well as behavioral attributes. So when I say anatomical, I'm speaking about those human parts that we all share in common, and the behaviors referring to the universal desire of all of us to want to survive, but not just survive, but thrive. So then we need to shift that piece of humanity into understanding the different levels of which our humanity is being impacted when we are classified as being irrational or hypervigilant or overly sensitive. First of all, let's take a look at the mental aspect of when someone attaches that unflattering label of the angry Black woman, I would say that it has a tendency to trigger a defensive reflex in us because we already understand that there's a lot of penalties that are attached to that. Since slavery, we have had to work double, triple, and quadruple time just to gain a modicum of favor. So, should we manage to become the cherry-picked minority in privileged spaces, it functions that those kinds of microaggressions or labels function as a sort of virtual slave master's whip um, to serve in, I'm sorry, a slave master's whip that keeps us in a subservient place
Mm-hmm.
and to discourage us from disrupting the status quo of those in power as well as those with more privilege. That's
Right.
the mental aspect of it. Then there is an emotional aspect to that. And what it does is it re traumatizes us with the attempt to silence our voices and reduce us to passive workhorses and mules. What I mean is, in other words, you should be grateful for the opportunity to serve in these exclusive environments and do not challenge the way the, if you will, plantation is being run. Let's just think about Colin Kaepernick. I mean, we're talking about women, but it's kind of across the board. He peacefully protested the injustice of what he has seen happening in the 21st century, let alone what we know for 400 years that before it. Okay, when you voice the injustice, the anger, the pain of it, somehow it is perceived as you're being paranoid. You get gaslit into being labeled as paranoid and scapegoated as being hostile.
Right.
Okay. And then there, as far as the physical impact for us, it is when you're dealing with these microaggressions over and over again, it is exhausting. Okay. The perpetual stress to do all this code switching keeps our fight and flight and freeze response in super high gear. And the human body just really isn't designed to tolerate those kinds of psychosocial batterings in a cumulative way over prolonged periods of time without any kind of consequence. And when I say consequence, the physical consequence is you will find that even when we have advanced degrees, even when we have the coveted positions and the six-figure salaries, that we are still, hear me clear, we are still vulnerable to being more predisposed to hypertension, heart disease, diabetes, deaths from cancer than our counterparts because it's internalized. There's no therapeutic or just outlet for dealing with the injustices and the constant assaults to our humanity.
Right. And one of the things that is so important, there's a couple of things that you said that I think are so important to realize. And one of those things is that many times we are, like you said, we're expected to be so grateful to be in the
Mm,
room or allowed at the table that that we're supposed to make people feel good about the fact
comfortable.
let us into the room or let us to the table when we come to the table we're there to affect change. We're not
Yes.
here to make you feel good because you made some kind of, great diversity move. We are here to let you know that there are certain things that are involved with being diverse, having diversity, and that we're here to affect change. We're not here to make you feel good about the fact that you've allowed somebody into your room or into your space. We're here to affect change. The other thing is that it is really important that we understand that what happens for Black women, and anger is a natural emotion. I think
Yes.
we need to understand that, I mean, God gets angry. So we need to understand that anger is a natural emotion, and that what happens to us when we are angry, like you said, because what happens for many Black women is we have to, if we're concerned about coming across as an angry Black woman, we have to step back, and we internalize so much because we feel like, okay, I got to calm down. Because when you see
Mm-hmm.
a Black woman talking to herself, a lot of times she's trying to bring herself down.
Mm.
So we have to do this, and in the meantime we're internalizing all of this. And they say high blood pressure and diabetes and breast cancer, everything is the number one killer of Black women. Seems like
Right.
everything is the number one killer of Black women. But in the
Yes.
meantime, we have got to internalize so often when we're in positions where we are trying to make it known that either we're displeased with something, or we feel that we've been disrespected, or whatever it is, that now we've got to step back. We have to internalize all of this and go through that whole process of how am I going to communicate
Mm-hmm.
without coming across as the angry Black woman. Because as soon as we raise our voices, or as soon as, even like you say, even as soon as our body language takes a different turn, then we're the angry Black woman. I'm going to tell you about a situation I had recently. um, I had to address a situation with my husband's medical care. And it was one of those things, and he's had excellent care. My husband is a kidney transplant patient, and he's had excellent
Mm-hmm.
care. But there was one thing that I felt that they missed the mark on. And so much so that it turned into a life-threatening issue.
Mm.
So my sister and I had to get him to the emergency room. I'm in the emergency room. The doctor comes in and she says, your hemoglobin is 5, it should be 12. That means you're bleeding somewhere. So now I'm furious. I don't know which
Yes.
part where furious falls on the scale. With mad,
Yes.
angry, I'm furious, okay? Because I
Yes.
know that we have been addressing this issue and trying to get somebody to look and take care of this issue. So now I had to go through this whole process. I said, okay, Karen, first of all, you're in the emergency room. And when you begin to voice your displeasure many times, there's two things that I think are at the top of the whole list of things that um, are just not cool about being labeled an angry Black woman. There's a whole list, but the two things to me that are really primary are: number one, you risk not being heard.
Mm-hmm.
Just being okay, you just get poo-pooed off. Oh, here we go, another angry Black woman hollering and screaming.
Right.
So you risk not being heard. The second thing is you risk coming across as threatening and
Mm-hmm.
so now I had to internalize this. I was furious. I had to internalize all of this. Why I go home for 2 days, it'll be 2 days, to get myself to the place where, okay, because they needed to know that I understood what went on here and that I was
Mm-hmm.
not happy at all about what went on. But it took me 2 days to calm myself down to where I felt I could communicate in a way that I would be heard and that I would not come across as threatening. And the
Mm-hmm.
fact that we as Black women have to go through all of that if we don't want to come across as being angry, this is what we have to do in order to be able to address our displeasure with whatever is taking place around us, whether it be in at work, whether it be in the medical field, whether it be in Hollywood, whether it be, recently when the actress, I can't remember her name right now, when she was talking to Will Smith about how she was labeled difficult and how hard
Mm-hmm.
for a dark skinned Black woman. The angry
Yes.
Black woman syndrome is a whole nother animal when it comes to dark skinned women, because we're automatically considered, dark skinned women are looked at as just being angry all the time.
Mm.
That's how we're perceived in a lot of ways, especially when we voice our displeasure, we are because most of the time when you look at the Sapphire caricature, she's dark skinned. And we're going to talk about how even on television and the media, typically the angry black woman is a dark skinned actress.
Yes.
That's who they talked, I think the article talked about um Taraji, Taraji P. Henson, when she's and when she was Proud Mary, that this whole thing about the angry black woman. And so here she is, you know, tearing up stuff. And so I happen to love cooking, but here she is tearing up stuff, and she's like, she's got a bat, she's going after the boy with a bat, and but again, here we are with this whole angry black woman, and we're seeing it in Hollywood. We're seeing it in our movies and on television. So tell me
Yes.
what you think about some of that with the how we're being portrayed in the movies and television with that we're angry.
Well, in the context of, what your platform here is about, colorism conversations, and particularly when you talk about, and I forget the actress's real name, but the one who previously played Aunt Viv on The Fresh
Yeah.
Prince of Bel-Air before Daphne Reed, who is a lighter complexioned woman, came in and assumed that role. Um, I really want to touch and spend a little bit of time on why it is I think those who are, I like to say, more richly melanated seem to carry that burden more profoundly. And at the core of colorism is our socialization to racism, and more specifically, white supremacy and white privilege. So, what does racism really do? It pathologizes the bodies, the movements, the language, and the heritage of our people. And that's evidenced when we look at the original Kenneth and Mamie Clark doll study. Since whiteness in our society in general, and I dare say it's not just here in America, it's a global, it shows up as a global phenomenon in which whiteness has been promoted as the universal standard of all that is deemed to be good and positive. So by default, um, blackness becomes characterized or correlated as being bad and negative.
Mhm.
And so the more degrees one differs in their humanity from whiteness, then a society assumes the worst on darker skinned people. And I think that that's the way we end up carrying that burden, maybe a little bit more than others. And for example, I mean, to reiterate that, just think about the Black Lives Matter movement, okay? And the way that those who are associated with Black Lives Matter and those who were a part of the protest over the summer in terms of the senseless murder of George Floyd. This was a situation where the societal response, particularly in positions of authority, was to bring in the National Guard, okay,
Right.
and to assail these people with mounted police. However, when we're dealing with people who did not look like us, okay, part of the human race, and were angry, hear me, angry
Right.
about the way the election went, they stormed and ravaged the U.S. Capitol.
Hmm.
And so when you look at the spectrum of what we're dealing with in terms of human experiences, we're all navigating the same society, but you see the response of towards one group of people and the levels that they are allowed to express, emote their grievances. And when we're talking about our people being murdered in the street for things like walking down the neighborhood carrying Skittles an iced tea, or you were in the convenience store and you had, it was assumed you had a counterfeit bill, but somehow that leads to you being murdered. Or you have
Right.
a situation where you're pulled over, like Sandra Bland, for a traffic stop, and somehow that ends in you being detained and you lose your life there. So what I'm really saying is that the contrast is stark and it is undeniable. But that is the way the society, the system works. We didn't design it. We're not playing victim. We're not pulling the race card. The deck was stacked in favor of others. Point
Right.
blank, period.
Right. Right. And it's interesting because now when we talk about when we talk about anger and we talk about injustice and we talk about social issues and the fact that they definitely do have to be addressed. There's no doubt about it that they have to be addressed. So then now we have to figure out how we can begin to resist the stereotype of the angry Black woman and make sure that we are seen and heard in the spaces that we occupy. And so, I think that one of the things that is so important to realize is that we all have we all have different ways that we do things. One of the things that I know I've had to learn in my life is that there's a difference between reacting and responding.
Yes.
And many times when you are in the middle of something that is happening and you have to make that choice about consciously make the choice. I think we have to become so aware of ourselves and our emotions and our feelings that we've got to be able to understand reacting versus responding.
Mm-hmm.
However, that whole process many times can be something that doesn't happen in the moment because
Right.
depending upon what it is, you may find yourself
Mm-hmm.
immediately reacting and not even thinking about responding. So you immediately react and your anger is there and your anger is very present, but you've got to be able to put it in a place where it becomes a response. And I think sometimes even when we're talking about response, the issue of even responding to something can be, you may think that you're well composed in your response,
Mm-hmm.
but depending upon how people see you, they may still not feel that you're as composed in your response because I want to read this. Um, this is from Eloquent Rage. A Black feminist discovers her superpower. So she says, we know what it means to snatch dignity from the jaws of power and come out standing. We know what it means to face horrific violence and trauma from both our communities and our nation state and carry on anyway. But we also scream and cry and hurt and mourn and struggle. We get heartbroken. Our feelings get stepped on. Our dreams get crushed. We get angry. And so we've got to be able to understand that there are situations, rightfully so, where we are angry, but we don't want to fall into how do we begin to reset this angry Black woman syndrome because we risk not being heard because again, like I said, we get blown off as, okay, here's another angry Black woman hollering and screaming about something. So
Hmm.
how do we begin to reset this stereotype? And in the meantime, we still got to be able to respond to those things, whether it be on the job, whether it be in society, whether it be in our homes. My husband used to ask me, because I've gotten better. He used to say to me, "How long are you going to be mad?" And I'm like, "Until I can
Hmm.
respond properly to you.
Hmm.
That's how long I'm going to be mad." Because, I learned that I came to understand about my words, for one thing, especially when you're talking about relationships. I came to understand about my words and how I had to choose my words carefully, because
Yes.
I used to be, before, the Holy Spirit really got to work on me. I used to chew you up and spit you out and stomp on you. I know it's hard to believe that sweet Karen was like that, right? I know it's so hard to believe that I was like that, but I was. I was.
Hmm.
I was really, with my tongue, was vicious. And I had to learn that there's a way to express yourself. There's a way to make clear what you are trying to say without being vicious and just, demeaning people and chewing them up and spitting them out, but nonetheless still have to be able to get our points across. So what do you
Yes.
think is going to be one of the keys to trying to reset this stereotype?
Well, I don't think there's a silver bullet. One thing is that we're not a monolith. Everybody is a unique person, and we're on different pages, paragraphs, and punctuations in terms of our development and even the things that trigger us. And so, one of the things that I've found useful is what I call unpacking our Sankofa stories. And for those who may not be familiar with the word Sankofa, it means to go back. It's a word in the Ghanaian language of Twi, which means go back and fetch it. In other words, the lessons that you've learned from your elders or previous experiences. Everything teaches us a lesson. And then be able to process that information so that you can strategically move forward. And so, with the things that have angered us, usually another thing I say is adulthood is where we spend the rest of our lives repeating the habits and trying to recover from the hangups of our childhood. So things have been modeled to us not only in society, but as families of color within our family system or structure. So how were things handled in terms of, that the unfairness or the indignities or the injustices that may have happened out in the world? How did that show up in your house? Was it did you find it in a situation where people numbed out with food? Did they numb out with alcohol? Did that altercation come home, or that dis-ease come home into the house and create a violent dynamic of which people in the house did not treat each other well? What have you learned about coping and coping well? What have you been taught about your value as a woman, as a woman of color, as far as navigating what your options are? Because we oftentimes unconsciously record narratives that we've internalized, and that it influences our choices and the quality of our lives, our responses. But I think when you start to unpack that story in terms of what was modeled to you, you start to realize what is and is not serving you well. And as an adult person, you become 100% responsible for not allowing the things that have haunt you and hurt you to continue to hurt you in your future. So that's what I mean by unpacking the Sankofa story and then exploring options to help you rise from the ashes. If that's anger, if that's issues with food, if that is a cycle of relationships that really don't honor you in a positive way, there are clues that tell us this doesn't work. And every time I find myself in this position, it puts me in a position to experience what I call the cycle of diminishing returns. You are the CEO of you. You have the option to decolonize your mind from whatever the narratives and the prototypes have been, to rise to a whole different level and be a healthier woman and person. So ultimately, you decide how you will make the world better despite what you have inherited and what has been modeled to you. I hope in some regard that makes some sense to you.
Yeah, it does. And I think also when we start talking, I think too, it requires education and communication, because there are so many things, like you said, that cause us to be angry, and some of it is a response to external stressors and historical factors. And I think one of the things with education and conversation, I think that people have to understand how it has been for Black women historically,
Yes.
and that
Yes.
this is, which we've said previously in this conversation, this is centuries of anger. This is, it's centuries of being, of having to deal with things that we in some instances have still not really recovered from.
Right.
And in educating and having conversation about where we are as Black women. And one of the things, I would always say is that when you encounter a woman who, sometimes if you're in the store or whatever, and many times, we feel like we may not have been, another Black woman did not serve us in a way that we felt we should have been served or anything. Sometimes I tell people, you don't know her story.
Correct.
You don't know why she may be angry, or why she may not be as customer service friendly as
Hmm.
you would like her to be, because you don't know her story. You don't
Hmm.
know where she is right now, what space she's standing in right now, what she even had to have gone through to get to that counter.
Right.
Don't know the story. And sometimes this is where the humanity comes into understanding that she's still a human being,
Yes.
and that in many instances what she has had to deal with to get to where she is right now, she may be in a place where all she knows right now is anger. Because
Right.
when, and I've never had to do it. Uh, I've never had to be a single mother. I've never been a single mother. I don't know what it's like to be a single mother.
Hmm.
I don't know
Hmm.
what it's like for a woman to have to figure out how she's going to take care of and provide for her children. I
Hmm.
don't know what that's like. So,
Hmm.
you know, I don't know what it's like for, a woman to have what for whatever reason she's doing it as a single mother. And it's not always she's doing it as single mother because the man is not present, because he is irresponsible. It
He
may
may have died.
pass away. We don't know what the situation is, but still we have to understand about the humanity and the civility of understanding where a person may be in that particular space, and not many times be respond with the same amount of anger, because sometimes it's just, she's not in a good place. And so there's she still is a human being, and there's still some humanity within her that has to be looked at and has to be viewed, and not come at her with the same anger that she's given, but maybe understand and say, whatever may be going on with you, you know I just want to tell you that you're going to be okay, or tell her that you are enough to handle whatever it is you're dealing with. we've got to understand that she still is a human being, even if she is coming across as angry. That's still a human being, and it's still a person whose story we don't know, and we don't know what has caused her to be angry. And so we've got to begin to look at it and say, okay, what can I say to this woman to help her to feel like she still is a human being, and that she doesn't have to come across as being an angry black woman, but she's got to still nonetheless deal with all of the things that are going on in her life. And again, we are we understand that anger is a
Emotion.
natural emotion, and that there are times when it it takes us to, many times, even help de-escalate a situation if we feel safe, de-escalate a situation where a sister is angry and she's lashing out, and be able to show her kindness and humanity and civility, and help her work through what that is, so that we understand that in order for you to be heard, you got to bring it down a notch. Even though right now you're really angry, you got to bring it down enough so that we can hear you and understand you, and begin to, but it's up to us too, in a lot of instances as Black women, to try to understand each other, and to try to understand where someone might be right now.
Yes.
That I've got to reach out to you with humanity and civility and compassion to help you to be able to come to a place where whatever it is that's fueling your anger, you're able to address it and get over it and get past it.
Right. And I think you said something along the lines about feeling safe, that you can. There are not a lot of safe spaces for us in many instances.
No.
So you would talk to a girlfriend, maybe you would talk to a family member. In previous generations, the church, particularly when we were talking about the civil rights movement, that was the headquarters, that was the sanctuary, if you will, that we went to be able to find solace. So in the 21st century, a lot has shifted and changed. And that's why I was inspired, motivated, compelled to create a multicultural, competent, solution focused, safe space
Right.
for Black women to be able to bring their stories, bring their hurts, bring their anxiety, bring their fears. And we empower her. The thing that distinguishes me from, let's say, someone who is a counselor, as I stated, or as you shared with your audience previously, I'm a life transformation strategist and culture catalyst. And while I share with those who are licensed professional the foundation, which is a master's in behavioral health, I do not diagnose you with a disorder of any kind in terms of what you're experiencing. I want to operate from a strength standpoint, put you in the power seat to tell your story on your terms and define the outcome that would be healing, that would be empowering, that would be helpful and healthy for you. So, with that said, I want to share with your audience that I actually am in the process. I have an offer that's coming up. The kickoff is in Black History Month, and we'll be running from February the 2nd through April the 22nd. So roughly a 90-day program in which you will have the opportunity, if you're interested in any of this, to actually schedule a one-on-one 30-minute Queen Conscious consultation with me to see how perhaps this could be a fit for you, to unpack some of the things and some of the burdens that you're carrying. And we start to work on understanding the seeds and roots of the Sankofa story that you have, as well as what will the theme moves be that help you to rise from the ashes and be more healthy and fulfilled and confident in moving forward from 2021 and beyond, as well as what you're modeling to the next generation that is modeling you. If you're interested in that consultation, you can go to https double forward slash SPI appointments dot as.me, and you can get on my calendar. Also, you can go to Sankofa Phoenix Institute dot Thinkific. Thinkific is spelled THINKIFIC.com. And there's actually a free mini course that's done like a survey. So it can help you process some of the things that you're dealing with. It doesn't cost you anything, but it will also give you the opportunity to get on my mailing list so I can share with you upcoming opportunities, perhaps for us to work together and start finding some of the helpful and empowering solutions to put you in a better position to feel like you are the CEO of you and that you have the power to change your circumstances rather than feeling locked into a cycle of diminishing returns.
Awesome. That's awesome. I put those links in the chat for you guys so that you're able to click on the link and be able to go to and sign up for Lauren's program or sign up for a consultation. The links are there in the chat for you. Um, and I just want to say before we close that one of the things that's really important, I think, too, with what we've been talking about is that you don't come to a conclusion that a Black woman is angry because she tells you how she feels about something and is direct about it. We cannot, just automatically put that that label of the angry Black woman on a woman because she's very direct and tells you
Mm,
how she thinks and how she feels, because we have every right to do that. We have every right to voice our opinions. We have every right, because once again, I said, when, it's not, people want to think that they've done us a favor or granted us some special privilege by letting us in some of these spaces. And we're in these spaces to affect change. That's what
yes.
we're there to do. We're here to talk about, I'm here to talk about colorism. And that's what my purpose is. That's what my mission is, to talk about colorism. And every space that I'm going into, I will talk about colorism, and I will talk about how it has affected Black women, particularly Black women, women of color with darker skin. And
Yes.
that's what I'm going to talk about. I'm not going to be quiet about it. And so, because of a woman of color, Black woman is very direct or tells you something about how she feels, it does not mean an angry Black woman. And we've got to begin to understand where Black women are coming from when they are voicing their concerns, voicing their opinions, when they're talking about the things that need to happen, the things that need to change. We're not, it's not about being angry, it's about being direct. It's
Yes.
being decisive. It's about letting people know exactly where we stand and the things that we want to see happen. It doesn't make us angry. We don't look at other races as them being angry when they're very direct about
Mm,
what it is they want to see happen. I don't think anybody has called Nancy Pelosi angry. Okay, she was very direct about what she
yes.
sees and what she wants to happen, what she thinks should happen. Nobody has
Yes.
labeled her angry or called her angry. So I think that, we've got to begin to not continue, we've got to begin to not allow this to continue, that we are labeled as angry when what we are doing is letting you know that this is how we see things. This is how things. This is what the things that need to take place. This is how things need, and we're just being very direct. It's not about anger. It's about being very direct and understanding that we have a lot of answers to a lot of questions. We have a lot of solutions to a lot of problems. And if you take the time to listen, you will hear amazing, amazing solutions and answers to problems and questions. But you've got, it's an issue of respect on all sides. We have to
Yes.
respect each other, regardless of what your race is. We always talk about civility and being civil to one another and listening to each other and understanding that my voice is just as important as anyone else's voice, and that we all matter, and that we need to really get to a place where we are listening and respecting each other and understanding the place, begin to understand the place that a person is coming from when they are speaking about an issue and what is taking place when we do that. Do you have
Yes.
closing remarks for us, Lauren?
I would say you pretty much summarized everything there, and I would just maybe put a bow on it by saying sometimes it's really not so much about being a culture fit, but figuring out ways to be in culture add. So, how do you add value because of the authenticity of your humanity and what you bring? You expand people's awareness, you expand your own when you look for the opportunities to grow rather than the opportunities to exclude.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to share with you and your audience tonight.
Yes, thank you so much for being here and for being such a great, great, great asset to this conversation. So I'm going to have some closing remarks, and you hang on for me.
Okay.
What a wonderful, wonderful conversation we've had today about the humanity of the angry Black woman. And I would encourage, excuse me, all of you to continue to make your voices heard, to understand that many times you may have to respond instead of react, and be able to come across with your particular answer, solution, be direct, but we want to be able to be heard. And you have solutions. We all have solutions. We have answers. We are amazing, amazing women of color. And so, what it takes, whatever it might take for you to be able to be heard, I encourage you to do that with the grace and elegance and sophistication that we have, and that you will not hide your not do not hide yourself, do not hide your voice because of fear of being perceived as an angry Black woman, but let your own your space and let your voice be heard. Do not let anyone have you, ask you to hide yourself or to not be present in the spaces that we need to be present in, because we do have answers and we do have solutions. So I thank you so much for joining us today. For the Color of Beautiful, we've got some things coming up for the Color of Beautiful. I have two launches that are going to be taking place in the next 90 days. One of them is the Institute for Healing Colorism. I'm starting a program, the Institute for Healing Colorism. That's going to be happening in the next, we're looking to launch that in February. And then we have the From Pain to Prose workshop that we're going to be doing, writing about colorism and being able to do some spoken word. If you've never done spoken word, you're still going to love it. You're going to be, I invite you, as I release information on it, that you will come and be a part of this amazing workshop, From Pain to Prose, where we're going to review spoken word pieces that have been written about Black women, about the beauty of dark skinned women. And then we're going to be doing some writing of our own. And I'm going to be giving you some different things about performing and about engaging an audience. And so it's going to be a really, really, really wonderful workshop that we will launch most likely in March. So keep your eye out for that. Please don't forget Wondrously Made Wednesdays. On Wednesdays, we are highlighting Black women, women of color across all cultures, women of color, and it's light skinned women, it's dark skinned women. We are highlighting on our Wondrously Made Wednesdays women who are doing amazing, amazing things. Last week we did Abby Phillips, who is a journalist CNN CNN, who was just amazing. She's amazing when she's reporting things. So we highlighted her last week. This Wednesday, we're going to do Stacey Abrams, who again is another amazing, amazing Black woman. We're going to be highlighting Stacey Abrams this Wednesday. And of course, next week, Wondrously Made Wednesday, the first woman of color vice president of the United States of America, Kamala Harris. We will be celebrating her on January 20th, all day long. And we will make a special Wondrously Made Wednesday to celebrate Kamala Harris on January 20th, is when the inauguration is. Be safe, continue to love on each other, and be civil with one another. And you can find information for The Color of Beautiful at thecolorofbeautiful.com. Color is spelled COLOUR, because you are beautiful. And please, if my sister will kill me if I do not say this, please follow us on Twitter at The Color, COLOURBEAUTI, because Twitter doesn't allow you all those things. It's The Color BEA. I hope that's what it is. BEAUTI on Twitter. And we're The Color of Beautiful everywhere else, on Instagram and on Facebook. Please follow us, and please invite others to look at this conversation, to listen, and to make comments. We always go back and look at the comments. And thank you guys so much for joining us today. Have an incredible week. And we'll be back to see you on Wondrously Made Wednesday. Be